Hello, fellow punters. Welcome to the weekly Bookie Basher show, where Mickey D here will be joined presently by the Stig to review the week and to give tomorrow's tips and have a chat about upcoming races. The show is only in its infancy, so I know some of you aren't keen on it, but just give it a chance and we'll see how it goes. It's an angle I just wanted to try, and there may be a reason long term for it. Anyway, it's 3:45 on Thursday, later than I had planned, but I had a very slow day. Someone said I was deflated last night, or well, I said it myself. But it was my head that was so bloody heavy. But I had a good lie-in this morning because we were off today. I had no bus runs this morning. And I actually didn't get up until 11 o'clock. And that's a long, long time ago since that happened before. But I got up, I had medication at about 7 and I went back to the nest and I stayed in it. So we're in flying form again, hopefully now. Head is feeling much better. Bit sniffly, all right. But anyway... we had two horses that ran today already. One, I was pleasantly surprised to see him run so well. First time in novice company, or first time over fences. He's only a novice. He ran very well up against seasoned campaigners in open company. We'll get him the next time. He was second. And then in the last race there, I have no idea what Mark Walsh was thinking of. Was it to try and protect his mark or what? But he should have come round the turn. He should have pushed on and just won the race, and that was it. Like 5-2 into money on. Had him in a Trixie with Dalcheeto and Blue Lord, a double with both of them as well. Because I thought it was the banker of the day, but not to be. Desperately disappointed with that ride from Mark Walsh. He's not one of my luckier jockeys down through the years, anyway. But want to run this evening, so hopefully there's a bit of money for that. But I'd like to ask the Stig what was the horses that tickled his fancy in the past week.
Hi Mickey, hope you had a really good week punting wise. There was a few horses this week that tickled my fancy. So obviously the first one has got to be Hermes Alain. I actually fancied Hugh Briscoe for this race last week and tipped him up at 11-4. He went off 6-4 favourite, but could not lay a glove on this fella, who went from the front, pinged all his hurdles and scooted clear up the Cheltenham Hill to win by 9 lengths. He looks to be a typical Paul Nicholls horse who's going to jump well. He seems to travel well and gives a sort of brave man's game or a stage star about him. He probably go to the Challow hurdle next, I suspect. The next horse that tickled my fancy this week was Bambridge. This horse featured on this segment of the show one of the first weeks when he won his beginners over 2 mile 4 in Gorham Park. He won again very impressively in Cheltenham, stepping back in trip to 2 miles. This did not seem to interfere with the horse whatsoever, and it actually made him look better. He used his jumping to his advantage, accelerating away once he hit the other side of his obstacles, and he won easily in the end, putting a 155 rated hurdler, Tommy Oscar, in his place quite readily. The next horse that tickled my fancy, Mickey, is a horse that we could not leave out of the segment this week, was the ultra impressive Queen's Gamble. Her win the weekend was almost a carbon copy of the win here last April. She looks a real classy mare and will be aimed at the champion bumper this year, and I think she definitely deserves to take her chance, and I think Mickey D definitely wants to claim this horse as a bus horse nice and early in the season. The last horse then that tickled my fancy this week was Hollow Games. His beginner chase this time around I think will throw up a good few winners throughout the year. Initially I thought the trip might be a bit sharp for Hollow Games, but his rounded jumping was brilliant, and to be honest he accelerated really quickly and put the race to bed after the last in a matter of strides. I also thought Get My Drift was an eye-catcher in that race with a view to handicaps down the line. Two horses that I want to mention actually very quickly before I finish up with this segment is obviously Jon Bon, who put in an exemplary round of jumping yesterday. looked the real deal, but I do think at 2-1 he is quite short for the Arkle. Obviously William Mullins will have his brigade to come out, the likes of maybe a Dysart Dynamo, El Fabiolo, them type of horses, but he did look really, really impressive on debut and couldn't have done it any nicer. The other horse that I do want to mention from earlier on in the week as well was Hermania Maker, who won a mare's maiden hurdle. She looked really impressive as well, and obviously with an eye to the mare's novice down the line, I think if she continues to progress, she could have a live chance in a race like that.
Somebody asked me there the other day, I think it was Tango Foxtrot, well, for a lucky 15 for Cheltenham anti-post. It's something I'm not a great believer in as I get older, because it's a bookie's bonanza for the anti-post betting. And as you can, the younger crowd in particular can see the last few years on social media, they're actively trying to pursue that angle to get as much money in the coffers, because they have your money for 4 or 5 months coming in from October, November. And if you can, they're pushing all these shows and getting experts in to give tips and whatever, but they're doing them at their benefit. And the prices aren't good enough in my eyes. Years ago, you get 50s and 66s and 100 to 1 about 4 months out. You don't get any of that anymore. If you ring up now or inquire about a horse, the most you might get is 20s or 25s, even without a run, because they're that cautious. So they're not really being fair, I think, and they're not giving a true reflection of the odds of the horse for next March. But I did say I will do it once, and I've done this bet myself today, but I generally don't do this. I only backed one horse anti-post last year. It was Statler, and I only backed one the year before, and I only have one back this year. That's Galloping the Champ for the Gold Cup. But I'll give you a lucky 15. So in the bumper, Queen's Gamble. While we picked it up and tipped it and backed it last week, and it has ran twice on the course and travelled very well and won very well, and we know that it's going there. It's going to have one run in a listed bumper in Huntington, and Ollie Sherwood wants to go there. Even though it'll be 5 then, Mayors have won it, Fiona and Relegate recently have won it. It's a 10-1 shot, so I'll include that. Now the next one is trying to read between the lines. I'm putting it in the Ryanair Fernie Hollow at 14-1. The reason being, Allaho, there's a doubt about it, and if it goes after Christmas, they mightn't get a run into it. They might just wait and have one run in Punchestown. But because it's the same owners, and because Fernie Hollow mightn't want to go up against an Ergamine coming from the same yard, it won a pint to pint at over 2.5 miles. It has 2 bumper wins, and I think that may go there. If it, I'm saying I'd rather take 14-1 about that than putting it in another bet against the Arkle or in the Champion Chase. And then in the Mayor's Novice Hurl, a horse that I mentioned the other day that I didn't back. Well, I backed, but I didn't put it up as a tip. Hermania Maker. It's 16-1 for the Mayor's Novice Hurl. That was 3 horses. I mentioned Dalcheetah last night as well, and I mentioned Mortal Speed the other day. So I hope some of you might be listening to when I come up with things like that I mightn't officially put it up as a tip. Just take note. And the other one then, that's 3, isn't it? Hermione Meg. The other one then is the Mayor's Hurl, Queen's Brook. Although it was bet the last time, and I was in Limerick that day, the ground was a bit shitty, it was soft, and it was second in the race last year, and we know it'll be targeted for the race again. So there's my 4. Queen's Gamble 10-1 for the bumper, Fernie Hollow for the Ryanair 14-1, Hermania Maker 16-1 for the Mayor's Novice Hurl, and Queen's Brook for the Mayor's Hurl is a 14-1 shot. I'd like to ask the Stig, looking forward to the week's racing. Some of the big guns are out. The return of Gold Cup winner Plutard in the Betfair. He was so impressive in this last year. Any views on that? And Constitution Hill is out the weekend as well. Just a question, whose camp will you be in come March, Constitution Hill or the reigning champion Honeysuckle?
Really looking forward to the Betfair Chase the weekend, Mickey, with the return of A Plutar. But just for me, it'll be a watching brief. I won't play him in any multiples or anything like that. I do think he's running on soft to heavy ground. Last year he won by 22 lengths on good to soft, which is obviously his ideal conditions. And again, it replicated that in the Gold Cup and skipped clear after the last to be one of the most impressive Gold Cup wins we've seen in the last couple of years. Now, he could absolutely sluice in, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit, but just on soft to heavy in Haydock, first time up, I'm not going to be putting him into anything the weekend. I'm just going to have it as a watching brief. With regards to the Champion Hurdle, I am absolutely fascinated by Constitution Hill and what he did in the Supreme. I do love an up-and-coming horse, and I do think the Champion Hurdle definitely needed something like a Constitution Hill to come out of the woodwork, because Honeysuckle was just dominating, and obviously she's a fantastic mare, probably one of the best mares that we'll see in our lifetime. And I'm a big Honeysuckle fan. I'm not nailing my colours yet to any horse. I think Constitution Hill will definitely be very close to Honeysuckle in the Champion Hurdle, but I do think he still has to improve. He has to get into open company and prove that he can last the pace of open company Champion Hurdle pace. And the likes of Dysart Dynamo and Jon Bon went off like the clappers last year and really suited him, so it would also suit the likes of Honeysuckle in a race like the Supreme last year. So I'm really looking forward to the two of them lining up throughout the season. Hopefully we get to see the clash in the end in the Champion Hurdle. I hope they're both unbeaten going there and we're going to be in for a classic. But if I had to nail my colours, it would probably be in the Constitution Hill camp, just because Honeysuckle is getting on, and I do think he is going to be the biggest test that she's going to face, but he does still need to improve, and I think he definitely is capable of improving to the level of Honeysuckle and definitely beyond if he keeps improving at the rate I think he will.
Another question to the Stig there, to keep him busy. The 1:30 on Sunday is the Punchestown is the Flower de Pearl Novice 2 chase, and it's always won by a very good chaser, a good progressive type. Has he any thoughts on that? I know there's two of his fancies for the year racing there.
Yeah, Mickey, there's a few horses in here that I have followed throughout last season and this season, and this Grade 2 Florida Pearl looks a tricky race on paper if they all turn up. Now, the horse that I mentioned last week, Panda Boy, is out to run here, and I'd be hoping that he'd finish maybe 4th in this race, 4th or 5th, not too far off the leaders, maybe 20 lengths behind them or something, to give him a chance to get a nice mark to look forward to a handicap later on in the year. The Devil's Coachman is a horse that I backed in Galway last time. The heavier the ground for him, the better. He's a horse that would interest me now if the ground turned up soft to heavy. Mynella Crooner is a horse that I have eyed up anti-post. I haven't bet him yet for the Brown Advisory. He's a horse that hurdles last year. He kind of missed hurdles now and then when he was getting into his races, and then he'd stay on really well to the line. He's a horse that I'll definitely be watching closely in this race, just to see how he jumps. It's his first time out this season, first time over fences as well, and he's chucked into a Grade 2, which is no easy assignment. So he probably wouldn't be a betting proposition for me, but I'll definitely be watching him in the race. There's a few more horses in there. We'll have eyes on handicaps down the line, the likes of Frontal Assault. Ida's Boy was beat last week or the week before by El Barra. Life in the Park was stuffed in Cheltenham. So there's a few horses in here that have a few questions to answer, but there's also a few horses in here that I'll definitely be keeping my eye on. But the Devil's Coachman, if the ground turned up heavy, would be one that I'd be looking to play if the odds are in my favour.
Friday's selections. In the 3:15 at Ascot, I tipped up one more for the road, but he was pulled out recently. As you can see there, it's a 4-1 shot. I thought to be more prices in at this time, but the last time it ran, it ran at 2 miles 4, and bringing it back to 2 miles, it's a grand traveller in the race every time it runs. You can see that it was fourth to Surprise Package in the that's Swinton, was it? The last day in the entry, to travelling like the best horse for a lot of the race, and it was it didn't stay for 2.5 mile, back to 2 at a track that had ran well in before. 4-1 shot there. I think it'd be competitive. And in the 240, it's handicap chase. 3 miles. The top weight there is Bobhopeornohope. But that's it's a point-to-point winner in 2019 for Cormac Doyle. It's 2 for 6 over fences. It won over 2 miles 5 off 123 and 3 miles off 127. It's first run of the year. It's out of Westerner, good to soft in places, they'll be fine. Kim Bailey, out of his last 30 runners, he has 5 winners and 8 places. That's 17%. And he had Dusty No straight enough for us last week. And really that was his first run because he only got to the first fence on his first run. So that's a selection tomorrow. I looked around at the other meetings. I didn't sort of fancy anything. I was going to go for a Credo, but I don't know what price it was. But in Dundalk, Fundalk as we like to call it on a Friday night. Now I know some people hate the sight of this, but I've been lucky with a few. Well, we have been lucky with a few winners, and we tipped up that Darkdeserthighway 25-1. Now it could have won the last time, but it was unlucky. I thought. I've no idea the price, but that's back tomorrow night. But there's one. What race is it? At Dundalk. The 6 o'clock. I think that's the one. There's a horse here. Nyla Rua, number 11. That's only a 3-year-old out of Zoffany. But it ran on the surface in a nursery last December. November, 26th of November. But it got into awful, if you look back at the replay, it was awful ergy-bergy up the stretch. And it was only beaten a few lengths. But that was off 64 at the time. And I always say water finds its own level. If you look back, its best run there this year was a 7.5 furlongs and good to yield in ground. This needs good ground. It ran 6th in Goran there on the 10th of August. It's only beaten 3 lengths. That was a 7 furlongs. It had its ground that day, but it hadn't its distance. It needs a mile on good firm, and the surface will be sound. So he's back down. He was on 64 this time last year. He's on 50, minus £4. That's bringing it back to 46. In the probable SP, I see it's 14-1. If it's 14-1, we can have a little bet on a pint each way. I don't think it'll be 14-1 though. I hope it is. And finally, back to the Stig for this week's nap, next best, and each way selection. We drew a blank again last week, and the person this week I've chosen is Craig. He's been on the bus for a while, and he's one of the 2 chefs, so he is the selection this week.
So hopefully I can turn my form around this week, and starting off my picks this week is the Nap, which is Do Your Job, who runs in the 205 in Ascot. Now this horse ran in the Old Roan in his last race and faded out, and since then he's had a wind up, so I'm hoping this wind up will have done the trick with him. That race seems to be throwing up winners. Gala was in third that day and has obviously gone on since and won the Paddy Power Gold Cup. And we had Hitman that day who ran a very, very good race. So I'm hoping this horse with the wind up will get the job done tomorrow. My next best is in the 225 on Saturday, which is going to be Charles Byrnes Run for Oscar, who's currently 9-2. And I'm advising to do this horse each way because on the day you'll probably get 4 or 5 places. And at worst, I think when Charles has his horses aimed for a race, he targets them and very rarely he fails to execute. So I'm hoping this horse will give us a big run for our money around 9-2. And I think this will have been the target for quite a long time. And I'm hoping he gets the job done on Saturday. My next best runs in the 315 on Saturday, and it's going to be Before Midnight, who is currently priced around 14-1, and I'm advising this horse each way. His last run was in Ascot, where he finished 6.5 lengths behind Pharaoh Bamboo and a further 5 lengths behind Time White. Now he gets a swing around in the ratings and in the weights. Today, Ascot is a bit of a specialist track as well, and he won this race 2 years ago. So I'm hoping with the swing in weights with the course form that he has. He also kept some good company last year racing against the likes of Shishkin, so I'm hoping at 14-1 I think he's a bit overpriced, and I think he will run a good race in Ascot on Saturday.
That's it for this week. So from me, Mickey D, and from the Stig, we'll see you next week, and I'll be back again on tomorrow evening with a few for Saturday. We have a few bus horses running. So bash the bookies. Over and out.